Pooja, first of all, thank you for sharing the story. It was actually quite inspiring the way you described it. I think back to your question, I really don't think it's difficult, right? It just goes back to the quality of the leader you are, right? I don't think there's a trade-off between insisting on high standards and being human at the same time. I think it's a false trade-off if at least that's the way some people frame it. I think there are two or three things at least I've realized as I've gone through this, right? One, like every change in life, and this is probably the most massive change we're all going through, there are positives and there are downsides, right? So it's always good to start with the positive and be hopeful, right? And for example, my personal story for the last 20 years, I've never been home this long, right? I've never seen my kids be kids. There is a silver lining, right? So I think just keep reminding ourselves that there are positives and things to be hopeful about. Second is you kind of unpack some of this, right? There are two or three things that are happening, right? One, as you said, the boundaries are fluid, and boundaries have been fluid for a long while, but now it's getting more accentuated, right? You can't really switch off that easily. Second, a lot of us used to get energy from physical interactions and unstructured conversations and walking into a customer and making a pitch or talking to colleagues. That's gone. And by the way, the tone of conversations has also changed, Pooja. Conversations are not that positive and uplifting anymore, right?
Right.
And then the third, which is probably the most important thing that's playing on all our minds, is what's going through is truly unprecedented, right? We don't have pattern recognition on this, right? And when you really don't know how to pick up patterns, and I'm a structured thinker, what happens is you start fearing the worst, right? And it was Mark Twain who said, I've been through some terrible things in my life. Some of them actually happened, right? And we are suffering more in our imagination than in our reality. And once in a while, you have to go and tell yourself that, listen, not every story that I tell myself is true, right? So that's a little bit of just personal reflection. I think as a leader, going back to the point, there are two, three things that you need to do, right? One is acknowledge that this is not impacting all of us in the same way, right? There's a big contextual variance. And by the way, even personally, right, within the same day, there are moments when I feel strong and on top of the world. And there are moments when I feel weak like hell, right? And you got to be okay with that and acknowledge that, right? And people are taking it differently. And when you're feeling weak, you go and ask for help. When you're feeling strong, you offer help. And that's one of the things that at least I'm trying to drive as a conversation around my teams, right? And kind of keep that in mind. Second, I think be vulnerable, right? Be open and authentic. Nobody's got a grip on this. So if you go out and say, listen, I've got this under control and I know how the next 6 months, 9 months, next quarter will look like, you'll lose credibility immediately as a leader, right? So I'm not trying to do that at all. And none of us are trying to do that. We're being very clear on what we know, what we don't know, and what we're doing to find out the unknowns, right? And just kind of being honest and upfront about it. And then finally, I think just creating forums and conversations like this, right? And we're having these conversations around our teams all the time. And we used to do an all hands. We've changed that to an all hearts now, right? And again, beyond just the nomenclature and the rhetoric and the words, it's a conversation about not just sweeping under the carpet everything that's not working well, like the number of Zoom calls and meetings and conferences and discussions, but having an open discussion, right? And helping each other out in our moments of weakness, and then offering help when we are feeling strong and good as leaders.